So I'm delighted to be welcoming Mark Thompson of Get Energy Savvy, who is an expert in energy. He's a trained physicist and engineer. He's had a lifetime working in the energy sector, and he has been able to distill all his very detailed knowledge on energy into concepts to make quick and easy energy savings that even idiots like me can understand. So I'm delighted to be handing over to Mark, and he's going to be telling you how to get energy savvy.
Thank you. So Get Energy Savvy, I'll talk about it more, is a website I started up a few months ago. I've retired, by the way, 3 years ago, so it's purely a hobby. So Get Energy Savvy is the brand I sort of pushed my messages out under. So I've been doing talks on this particular subject for about 3 years. And I've seen a transition from people finding home energy and insulation and all that sort of stuff quite boring, hence the graphic or the smiley I've used up there, through to people now becoming more and more curious. And people, I'm coming across geeky people, not only people who've got spreadsheets about their PV, but people that've got graphs about their boiler temperatures and stuff like that, which is fantastic. So my goal in life, and what's my passion, is to help people understand energy better. And if you can understand energy better, you can make better decisions about what you do in your home, how you manage it. And a little bit more about my background on this particular subject. I've done 2 sort of home energy retrofit projects. The top one there I did 13 years ago, which is my own 1950s house, where I did a ground source heat pump, solar hot water, solar PV, heat recovery ventilation system, and lots of other stuff as part of an extension project. And then 4 or 5 years later, my in-laws trusted me to do the same thing on their bungalow, and they're still talking to me, so that's obviously a good sign. The other reason I get really excited about this agenda is that about 12 years ago I bought a thermal imaging camera for myself, intending to do it as a business. I never did. I did something else in the energy sector. But I had this expensive toy, and I've done dozens of home energy surveys for free over the years, and going to people's homes, not just looking at it from that point of view, but helping understand people and how they use their homes, how they understand their heating controls, look at the behaviours in a home. And I've had an awful lot of fun doing that with people welcoming me into their home for a couple of hours. I'm also very nerdy in that I can't go into a building or a room and not stand there thinking, why is it cold in here? Or why is it so warm in here? And what's the radiator set on? And why is that radiator hot? Because this room hasn't got anybody in it. And things like that. So I had this very sort of nerdy aspect to me, which my friends and family are quite tolerant of now. And I was in somebody's kitchen the other day, and I sat there working out, hang on a minute, your halogen light bulb is costing you 50p an hour. It didn't go down well. So a little bit about humans and comfort. For me, the passion is how to use a building in a more efficient way without having to spend any money necessarily. So a little bit about humans and comfort. So I was very lucky to meet an academic from Imperial College London a few years ago, who is an expert in in thermal comfort and people. And he taught me some really interesting things about humans and comfort. So we naturally assume that the temperature and the temperature of the room we're in will dictate how warm or how cool we are. There are many other factors as well that affect how comfortable you feel. Humidity is one, how active you were earlier in the day, your age, your weight, etc., etc. Lots and lots of things. And most people have a general comfort of being in a room at about 20 degrees. So the vast majority of people will be in a room at 20 degrees and feel quite happy, quite comfortable. And that's one of the reasons, for example, that airports are sort of 20, 21 degrees, because that's the right comfort level for most people. But he also taught me that there are some people who are only really comfortable when it's really warm. So my in-laws who've got this bungalow, they have the lounge, it's like a bloody oven, if you pardon my expression. And I go there always with a t-shirt underneath, because they have the lounge at about 24, 25 degrees, and they're in the late 80s. And I have a t-shirt underneath, because after an hour, I'm stripping off all my layers, and I'm down to just a t-shirt, no matter what happens. But that is their thermal comfort temperature for them. That's where they are happy, that's where they need to be for them. So there are people like them who are only comfortable at those sorts of higher temperatures. Myself and my wife, luckily, we're about the same. We're about 22 degrees is our sort of thermal preference level at home in our lounge. But we are all different. So luckily, because we are the same at home in our house, we don't have any arguments about a thermostat. But there are also people who are only comfortable in cool environments. I met an Australian a few years ago who moved to the UK for the weather. Those were his words. And he worked down in London. He wears shorts and shirt sleeves all year round. He has a flat in London. He leaves the windows open all through the winter. He only likes it 14 or 15 degrees. Anything more and he's hot. Is there anybody in the room here that recognises themselves as that? So you're quite comfortable in this room, or are you? How do you feel?
It's warm in my house.
It's warm in your house. So I was in a room like this a few weeks ago doing a talk on this, and the lady in the audience said, "I'm hot," and everybody went, "What? You're hot?" Because it's only what 16, 17 degrees in here at the moment. So there are. You're quite rare. So there are. Your heating bills must be virtually nothing. Excellent, lucky you. So we are all different. And then there is an even rarer person who is comfortable at almost any temperature, and they can go from a cold room to a warm room wearing the same clothes, and they won't feel any different. They will feel comfortable no matter what the temperature, whether 15 degrees, 20 degrees, 25 degrees. Is there anybody here like that? They are really rare. I've only ever come across 2 people like that. No? Okay. And I do envy them, because when they're going on holiday, of course, you only need to pack a limited number of clothes because you're only dealing with one sort of set of needs. So we are all different, and although arguments in the home about thermostats do occur sometimes because somebody in the home might be meaner than the other person, it could be because we are all physiologically wired differently from a thermal comfort point of view. There's something about comfort and how we feel it. I used to work at Rolls-Royce Cars, or Bentley Cars as it's now called in Crewe, and as an engineer there, I was very aware that a car, by design, will give you warmer air at your foot level than it will do coming out of the vents at the fascia. When you're driving a car, most people like to have slightly cooler, fresher air on the face than on their feet, because we are physically wired to prefer to have warmer feet than our face. And that's how cars are. Similarly, when you're sleeping at night, you wouldn't have your quilt cover over your face. You might have a cooler face. We all have our face sticking above a quilt. So humans prefer mostly to have warmer feet than their face. Why is that important for a home? Because we heat homes with convector radiators. The air meanders up the wall, round the room very, very slowly. We end up with a temperature gradient there, where the top of the ceiling and the top air layers in the room are warmer than the bottom air layers, and our feet are actually the last thing to get that thermal energy, to get that heat. So the way we heat our homes currently, in the main, which is almost exclusively, maybe 99% is through convector radiators, isn't actually suited to humans and comfort. Because for most people, your feet will dictate your comfort levels. And of course, you're creating a warmer ceiling as well, and if you've got a warm ceiling, then that's heat that's going to be lost into the roof space or the loft above. So if your feet don't feel cold, if your feet feel cold, you won't feel warm in the main, is the general rule. But if you turn it on its head with underfloor heating, we've all experienced, I'm sure, underfloor heated rooms, and the moment you go into an underfloor heated room, most people go, "Ooh, we've got underfloor heating." And the reason is because you're giving your feet, which is the most important thing for most people, the warmth that they really need, because feet really do dictate comfort for humans. And studies have shown that underfloor heating, as opposed to convector radiator heating, is much more efficient, because you're getting the heat to where you personally need it the most, and it's between 15 and 40% more efficient. That isn't the case for electric underfloor heating, because electricity is so much more expensive than gas or oil even. So if you've got electric underfloor heating, you will know that you'll need wheelbarrows to carry all the money to pay for it if you let it get out of control. So, Heat is really precious these days. It's something we've become used to in the last 50 years. We didn't have central heating 50 years ago, or very few homes did. So I've got a few mottos I'm going to put forward today. One is, keep the heat where you want it. So here's a lovely graphic showing the heat from a traditional radiator going up the wall, as I described earlier, and gradually meandering around the room. Unfortunately, we have, for many traditional reasons in the UK, had a habit of putting radiators under windows. Glass, even if it's really well insulated with the latest double glazing, is still very mossy, very leaky from an energy efficiency point of view. And as you can see, the disruptive effects that the window and the windowsill and the reveals are having on the airflow from that radiator is actually creating lots of lovely airflows for the heat from that radiator to escape through the glass. And actually, how much of it is getting into the room directly, quickly, easily, nowhere near as efficiently as it is on the left-hand side. So that's doing a very good job of helping feed heat out of the window to the outside, where you don't want it. You want it in the room. We have a bad habit, though, particularly in guest houses and hotels, and sometimes in homes, of doing that. Has anybody got that? You never put your hands up, will you? And that's doing a fantastic job of keeping that heat really in the window reveal. It's really saying to most of that heat, don't worry about the room, just get out the window. And on a cold night, with that radiator nice and hot, I guarantee if you went outside and touched the outside of the glass, you'd find it's warm, because that window is getting a fantastic slug of heat, and very little of that heat is going into the room, which is where you want it. And this is our guest bedroom at home. My wife used to draw the curtains like this and insisted that looked better than the situation on the right there, but I have now one. We now have a rule at home which is thou shalt tuck the curtains in behind the radiators when you have curtains that are long enough to do this. And the situation on the left here is really not very much different to that. It really is giving a fantastic opportunity for the heat from that radiator to warm the window, warm the glass, warm the outside world up, preferentially to the room, which is where you want it. And the right-hand arrangement is much, much better. And don't ever do that. Radiator covers cover the heat. They do a fantastic job of preventing it getting into the room. And where else is it going to go? It's going to go outside. So radiator covers, which are generally hotels and guest houses, sometimes in homes, are a crazy energy efficiency idea. And if you have one, if you lift it off, if you can lift it off, you'll suddenly notice your room warms up an awful lot quicker. And there's lots of really hard evidence to say that the old-fashioned things about drawing curtains and shutting doors is really good from a heat and energy efficiency point of view. To the tune of, I'll show you I'll show you some statistics in a minute, sorry. And the more we now have homes where we're able to heat different rooms to different temperatures with thermostatic radiator valves, for example, the need for shutting doors is greater than ever from a thermal efficiency point of view. So even if it's a room that you're in and out all day long, keep the door shut, because if you want that radiator in that room to keep that room at 23 degrees and you want the rest of the house only to be at 19 degrees, then keep the door shut. And here's a visual representation of a pretty common situation where you've got a lounge here, which might be 22, 23 degrees, a nice warm living room with an open door to the stairway, and there will be very, very slow air currents of warm air. Oh, this is not my gadget. Warm air very slowly rising from that room, meandering up the landing, gradually cooling, and then gradually coming back down and back down the stairs and into the room. And one of the houses I visited a few weeks ago had got a chair just inside there, and the husband said, "This is where I sit when I watch the television. It's quite cold when I sit here in this chair. What should I do about it?" I said, "Shut the door." Oh, okay. Problem solved. And it will solve the problem, because if you then close that door partially shut, right, if you've got a door like in this situation, and you shut the door to within a couple of inches, you will feel, if you put your hand up, you will feel that warm air going out the room at the top. You will feel, if you put your hand on the bottom, cold air coming from upstairs back down into the room. So you're losing heat from your lounge where you want that radiator in that lounge just to serve your needs when you're sat there and you want that room at 22, 23 degrees. So if you're in a two-storey home, in particular, doors shutting is hugely important to keeping the heat where you want it, which is where you are. So proper zone management, including good use of thermostatic radiator valves, has been shown to save between 10 and 30% of home energy costs, which is a saving you can have for free. There's no investment. Just managing your home a little bit differently with some of the things I've talked about. And then question yourself as to why you're heating some areas of the house the way you are. I visited a house a little while ago. The hall was at 23 degrees. The radiator was red hot. I said, why is the hall so warm? Why do you need that radiator so hot? And they said, it's always been like that. So why do you heat a hall? Why do you heat a downstairs loo? Why do you heat the utility room? You don't need to. Most homes will never have a frost issue. You need to be careful and look at, have you got exposed pipes behind the loo and all that sort of thing. You can get some situations where it's not impossible to get a frost situation, but for most homes, there are whole areas that can be turned off, provided you've got good ventilation to avoid damp issues, of course. So challenge yourself as to why you think you need to heat all the radiators and all the rooms to the same level all the time. We actually don't need to at all in most cases. And then we have a love affair with airing cupboards and having warm, fluffy towels. If you've got a hot water tank and you've got lots of pipe work off it, if you've got an airing cupboard at 30 degrees, why do you need it to be at 30 degrees? We have this love affair with having warm, fluffy towels, and yet we don't keep on our underwear in the airing cupboard. Why do we feel we need to keep towels in a warm cupboard? So if you have an airing cupboard with hot water sat there and hot pipes that are leaking heat, insulate the pipes, because this currently is probably the warmest room in most people's homes, and it's not a room we spend any time in. So challenge yourself as to why that cupboard is warm, if it is warm, because it really, really doesn't need to be. And even if you insulate all the pipes, it will still be reasonably warm in there to keep towels aired, as we seem to like to in the UK. And the next, and I talked about this, energy is precious, and another motto to help think about how to manage a home is how you control your energy. So surveys have shown that people don't understand how these things are used. And that's certainly my experience visiting many homes. These things are pretty crude. We don't tell you how to use them on them. They've normally got a 1 to 5 scale. Now, does anybody know what number 3 means on one of these? No?
20 degrees.
Yeah, so number 3 will keep the room at 20 degrees and no more. Number 4 on a 1 to 5 scale, some have got a 1 to 6 scale, some have got a 1 to 7. Number 4 will keep the room at no more than 24 degrees, which is pretty warm. Number 5, if the heating's on long enough and the radiator's big enough and the boiler's big enough, it will get the room up to 28 degrees, because number 5 sets the room temperature at 28 degrees. So what do? We go into a room that's got one of these in it, the room isn't warm enough, and people crank it straight up to number 5. Yeah, they expect the room to warm up quickly, they'll go about their business, and then suddenly, later on, they'll realise that the room's overheating, so we'll turn it down to 0. These things are really sensitive to adjustment. And position 2, I should say, is 16 degrees. So between position 2 and position 4, you've got an 8-degree range. So if you're in a room and it's not quite warm enough, and it's got these things in it, just rotate it a tiny amount. Just slightly more, and this will respond. I've done tests at home, nerdy with me, with thermometers. These things will respond really, really well. So if you just nudge it up slightly more than number 3, the room will respond, and the temperature will lift up to 21 or 22. But if you let the room get up to 24 degrees, you're heating it far more than you actually need to. Now, you actually only want the room to be 21, 22, but these things don't tell you how to use them on them. And because of that, most homes I go into, these things are either set at number 5, because people don't know how to use them at all, or they're set at 0. And all the ones in this building I've been around in before I came on today, all the ones in this building were either set at 0 or 5. Yeah? They're all now set at 20. I've been around and done it. I do, and I do it in pubs. Pubs are terrible. Pubs are always baking hot, and they've all got the radiators on full because these things aren't used. So I go gently and quietly, just turning them down to number 3 or 3 and a bit. So these things there are taps for money. You know, you only need to heat a room as much as you need it for you to be just warm enough. Any warmer, heating has to work harder. You'll use more gas or oil or whatever it is. So these things are absolutely brilliant. I used to think they were a naff bit of gadget, but having played with them and adjusted them and learned how to use them, and there's a very good web page on my site that tells you how to use them. And if it's only got a number scale on it, you know, I put a felt tip pen mark on the one here for our study, our guest bedroom, so that when visitors come, we know what position we like it for visitors to come. So once you establish what your preferences are for each of the rooms, make a note of the numbers that you have these things set to help save money. Because tests from by Salford University in the last couple of years have shown that on average these things, if you use them the right way, will save you about 18% on your energy bill, because they will prevent unnecessary overheating of rooms. So that's a very significant saving, and the vast majority of people don't realise how these things work, because, as I say, they don't tell you how they work on them, and there is no the instructions are very poor, and heating engineers don't tell you how to use them properly either. When you're controlling your energy, there are myths out there, perpetual myths, that if you have your heating on 24/7, it's a more efficient way of doing it, and you'll use less energy. For the vast majority of homes, that isn't the case. For some homes, some lifestyles, it could be a bit cheaper, but in the main, and this is the official advice of the Energy Saving Trust as well, only have your heating on as much as you need it when you need it on. If you do that, it will almost certainly cost you more money. And then there's also a common belief that cats and dogs and other pets need to have the heating left on whilst you're out. That is from a survey. That's not me guessing. That is from a survey by I forget where it was now. I've got the source somewhere. 12 million homeowners, which means about 40% of you leave the heating on more than you would for yourselves for the sake of the pet. So 40% of homes in the UK are burning more gas than they need to because they think Fido or Tibbles needs to be warmer than they are. And all the veterinary experts and animal health experts say don't do it. It's actually not good for the pet. It's better for them if it's cooler because it reduces the issues of ticks and lice and stuff like that. So we unfortunately, and I have a page on my website on this, and unfortunately it's the least read web page because people don't want to know. So that's a myth that you need to do that. And if you're feeling guilty about not doing that and turning the heating off, get them one of these things or get them a little heated pad to try and overcome your guilt if you do change your practice because of what I've just been saying. But that's a lot of homes, isn't it? That's a lot of gas, that's a lot of carbon, completely unnecessary. Chinchillas, rabbits, you can freeze them almost and they'll be fine. Gerbils and hamsters, they're actually quite sensitive. Be careful with those, they're a bit like humans, no less than 17 or 18 degrees. But our famous, typical furry friends don't do it. So the last motto is, you've paid for it, this stuff you're burning, so keep as much of it as you can. Now, I've got lots of slides about energy loss that I can't show today. I'm a bit short of time, but here's a few. So cavity wall insulation, if you touch a masonry wall, it will feel cold. The reason it feels cold is partly it's because it's a lower temperature than your hand, but also it's sucking heat out of your hand. So you have to think of walls as a thermal sponge, they're sponging energy away, sucking it away. And I had a revelation in the loft many years ago. We've got a cavity wall around the house and it's insulated, but we have an internal wall that's cavity wall. It's got a cavity wall, unusually, just a small area. So we've got this wall here in one of the upstairs bedrooms that's not got insulation in it, and it's got a radiator against the wall. And I was up in the loft one winter's evening, as I do, and I put my hand above the cavity. I had a eureka moment because I felt warm air rising up through the cavity. Because that wall behind the radiator, and that wall was a good 2 inches from the radiator, was soaking up heat from the radiator, and it was just chimneying it out of the house. So that was a real wow moment for me. I think I might have said bloody hell when I put my hand there, and it really was warm. It was in the high 20s, maybe low 30s in terms of the air temperature. I didn't measure it. It was probably about a decade or so ago. So I'm a huge fan. That was a real wow moment for me in terms of me understanding how valuable cavity wall insulation is if you can fit it. About a quarter of homes, according to official statistics, about a quarter of homes that could have cavity wall insulation don't have it. So if you can have it, it really does make a difference. And here's one of my neighbours' houses. This is just a few weeks ago. They've got a wall in the house below here, which used to be the end gable wall. So it's got a cavity in it, but the house was extended and the roof was extended. So they have an internal wall that's got a cavity that's never been filled. And as you can see here, the frost back in December, the snow on the roof was melting preferentially over where that internal cavity was. So that was another bit of evidence for me that shows visually how important and how good cavity wall insulation is. And it only costs a few £100 to do, and you get paid back within a year or two. So why would you not if you can? And the cavity wall insulation also helps you in summer. I have measured my south-facing wall on a sunny day, and it can reach 45 degrees centigrade. So if you've got cavity wall insulation, that is a clear, natural, obvious way of trying to keep your house a bit cooler in summer. And it's something we're becoming even more mindful of with the extreme weather we had last year, for example. But if you want to keep the internal house, part of the house protected from summer sun and summer heat, cavity wall insulation has a summer value as well. And loft insulation, not the most exciting subject, but I think it's brilliant. And I have been in my loft and measured the air temperature in my loft, and it can be over 40 degrees C on a hot sunny day. You shower at 40 C, most people shower at 38, 40, 42, and the loft temperature can be at that sort of temperature level. So again, there's a summer benefit with loft insulation, which will improve the thermal comfort and the internal temperatures in the house if you have the right level of insulation. And a third of homes in the UK don't have any or enough loft insulation, and it is cheap as chips to do. So this is a white slide. This is a picture of my landing ceiling one summer's day. It's not a particularly interesting picture, I know. I lay on my back on the floor and took it on the landing. And what I'd done the day before was go into the loft and make a hole in my loft insulation. So I've got about a foot of loft insulation, and I cleared a hole all the way down to the ceiling surface on the other side. And then I took a thermal image of that ceiling area the following day after we'd had an afternoon of sun and the loft was nice and hot. And it showed that where I had got no loft insulation, the temperature of the ceiling was about 5 degrees hotter than the rest of the ceiling. So that was I knew there'd be a hot spot, but I didn't know how much difference it would be. So the main part of the ceiling in the bulk of the house on this pretty warm day in August last year was 27 degrees. That's pretty hot for a bedroom to sleep in, etc., etc. if the room gets to that. But the hot spot here in the middle, where I cleared the hole in the loft insulation, was 5 degrees higher. So if I got no loft insulation at all in the house, the whole of the ceiling areas and all the bedrooms would be at 32 degrees. So again, loft insulation has got a massive benefit in summer as well as winter. And then finally, on the sort of fabric side, draft proofing is a detective job, and it can be a bit of a tedious job, but most drafts can be fixed. I see people online saying, I live in such a drafty house, what should I do? Fix the drafts. And most drafts can be fixed. UPVC doors can be fixed. UPVC windows, wooden frames, windows can mostly be fixed. Drafts can be fixed. But here's a couple of examples that you might not think of. You need to get creative and look for heat loss. This is the ceiling in a cupboard, in an airing cupboard, or a cupboard that used to be an airing cupboard, where a plumber has taken out a pipe and left a ceiling hole right through into the loft in what is now just a cupboard. I see this quite a lot when I do energy surveys around the place. Here are some other examples. So wherever you have an electrician or a plumber that's done some work, or lots of legacy old stuff here as well, you'll see holes through to the loft. Well, that is just chimneying warm air out of your home. So every draft you feel coming into the house is finding somewhere to go out, and this is one of the places it goes out. So if you've got a cupboard that was an airing cupboard, or is an airing cupboard, go into it and look up and see if there are any legacy holes from any work that's been done by a tradesman. And here's the worst example with a neighbour I visited a few weeks ago. I said, take me to your airing cupboard, hot water tank, boiler on the wall, and these holes here were left from when the boiler was upgraded a couple of years ago. And that one there on the right up there, which was immediately above my head when I looked in the cupboard, I could put my arm through that. That was straight into the loft. And she wondered why the airing cupboard was never very warm. And she never looked up herself. So go into your airing cupboard and look up. And I've got lots of other pictures of tradesmen, horrors like that, but I haven't got time. But white van man is the enemy of the state. Unfortunately, there are hundreds of thousands of them out there. They do not care about energy efficiency or understand it, or air tightness, most of them. If their van looks like landfill, they probably don't have the right angle in terms of finesse and trying to make sure they do a tidy job. So we've all got to be more vigilant customers, as well as the professions need to professionalise it as well. But air tightness and ventilation are really an interesting subject area, and it was mentioned earlier on as well. We must have homes that are well enough ventilated. You can't make an airtight box into a healthy box. You have to ventilate, because we have issues in the UK with indoor air pollution. About a third of the deaths linked to air pollution in the UK are from indoor pollution that's generated indoors. So don't go too far on draft-proofing a home until you've actually understood the ventilation side as well. And I've got a very good guide on my website to this. And if you have trickle vents, always leave them open. They are there for a very good reason. So there is there's tension between drafts and ventilation that we must all understand better, because healthy homes are homes that are ventilated properly. So the website I set up last September, I've done it all myself. I don't make any money out of it. No advertising or anything. GetEnergySavvy.info. There's 50 articles there designed to be really practical, help people understand what they can do for themselves, DIY instructions on how to do some things, but also educational as well about energy. And here's some example articles on there. There's one about how to reduce your boiler flow temperatures, because you can save up to 10% of your heating costs if you do that. We've been fitting condensing boilers for nearly 18 years now, and we've finally woken up to the fact that the industry hasn't been setting them upright for customers. There's a couple of articles there about how to reduce drying times using dehumidifiers for laundry, or using heated areas for laundry, because if you get it wrong you can spend an awful lot more money than you really need to. There are articles there about how to, if you have an integrated garage and you've got a cold room above, what can you do? There's half a dozen practical ideas all laid out with lots of straightforward practical information about what you can do to make the bedroom above an integrated garage or over a carport warmer and easier to heat. And there are some practical things you can do, many of which you can do yourself. There are also there's an article there about how to improve loft storage and raise your boarding up, so that you can have storage up there and have the right amount of loft insulation. There's about 8 or 9 articles about damp condensation, ventilation, the link with heating, because that's not well understood. It's a very, very big, important problem that people need to understand better. And there's also even an article about how to find drafts when it's not cold or windy. You can do it. There's a sneaky trick, it has to do with windows and doors in particular. So there's a hack for that. There's an article about that. So I'm going to finish now. I don't sing, so I'm going to finish with a quiz. This is a quiz about kitchen energy. So, if you want to heat water up to make a cup of tea, is it cheaper, use less energy, using a kettle or a microwave? Microwave? Hands up for microwave. Hands up for kettle. Microwave, one of that. The answer is kettle. No, kettle. Kettle wins, it's about half the amount of energy to use a kettle.
What about an induction boil?
Induction hob is very similar to a kettle.
I thought it's faster, but it's more energy. It's faster but more energy.
uses the same amount of energy to heat up water. I've seen someone do that test. Yeah, it's very, very similar to a kettle. So a kettle and an induction hob are really efficient. Microwaves are not efficient. They use half of the energy they use just to generate the microwaves. So if you heat a little bit of something in the microwave, if you put your hand in, the microwave's all red hot afterwards. Because the microwave, the box itself, is generated a lot of heat just to generate the microwave energy. So microwaves are not efficient. So the microwave will use twice as much energy to do that than a kettle. A kettle is king by far. A kettle compared to an instant hot water tap. Instant boiling hot water tap, like a cooker. Any bets? Cooker always say, oh, you'll save energy. Most of the time a kettle wins. Unless you're boiling an awful lot of water for an awful lot of cups of tea, a kettle wins, and there's an article on the website that shows you all the facts that nobody else on the internet has done. That the kettle is king. Kettle is much more efficient and obviously it's a much cheaper investment. But two other quick ones. I want to do a roast joint or something in a... Is it cheaper to do it in an electric oven or to do it in an air fryer? Yeah, to a certain extent, but it's the same meal, so white and white meal, an air fryer will actually be cheaper, around about half, depending on the size of the air fryer. If I was to cook that same meal in a gas oven compared to an air fryer, gas is cheaper. Gas is still cheaper. And the last one, a slow cooker meal, identical ingredients, identical cook time, identical cook temperatures, in a slow cooker compared to a pan on a hob, any hob actually. Slow cooker, okay. No. The hob is about 50% more efficient, so you use about 2/3 of the energy to do it that way than you would with a slow cooker, because a slow cooker is bigger, got a bigger surface area, it's leaking heat out more. So a pan, whether it's induction hob or even a conventional electric hob, or even gas is even cheaper, a pan sitting there slowly for 6 hours will use less energy than a slow cooker. And this is all because there's a lot of misinformation out there, unfortunately. So, I think I'm done. Thank you.